Hi there, welcome to Fantasy Hub. I'm Mia, your storyteller. Today's story is filled with heartache, discovery, and a twist you won't see coming. So let's begin.
My name is Lena Martinez, and 3 months ago, I thought I had my life figured out. I was 26, living with my girlfriend of 2 years in a decent apartment in Hoboken, working as a graphic designer for a small marketing firm. Nothing glamorous, but stable, safe. The kind of life my immigrant parents had sacrificed everything for me to have. Then Jessica decided she needed space to find herself, apparently with her yoga instructor, Brad, whose man bun and trust fund made him infinitely more appealing than my student loans and late-night work sessions. The breakup was swift and brutal. She kept the apartment, the friends, even my cat. I kept the debt and a rapidly shrinking bank account, which is how I found myself working at Velvet Dreams, a gentleman's club on the outskirts of Jersey City. That was about as far from gentlemanly as you could get. The owner, Vincent Carlucci, was a walking stereotype: gold chains, slicked back hair, and eyes that undressed you before you even walked in the room. But he paid cash, didn't ask questions about work visas or background checks, and let me work the bar instead of the pool, which was about the only boundary I had left. That October night, the storm hit Jersey City like God was personally angry at the entire state. I just finished my shift, 6 hours of mixing drinks for men who thought buying a woman a cocktail entitled them to her life story and phone number. The rain was coming down in sheets so thick you couldn't see across the street, and my ancient umbrella chose that exact moment to surrender to the wind, leaving me stranded under the club's flickering neon sign. The smart thing would have been to call an Uber and wait inside, but I'd spent my last $20 on groceries that morning, and my phone battery was at 3%. Pride and stubbornness, two traits that had gotten me into this mess, kept me from going back inside and asking Vincent for help. So I ran through the industrial wasteland that surrounded the club, past chain-link fences and abandoned warehouses, looking for any shelter that might get me through the worst of the storm. That's how I ended up in an alley that smelled like wet garbage and broken dreams, pressed against a brick wall that offered about as much protection as tissue paper. I was standing there, water dripping from my hair, and wondering how my life had gotten so spectacularly off track when I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate, completely unafraid of the storm raging around us. She appeared out of the darkness like something from a dream, tall, elegant, holding a black umbrella that looked like it cost more than my monthly rent. Her dark hair was perfectly styled despite the wind, and she was wearing a coat that probably had a designer label I couldn't pronounce. But it was her eyes that stopped me cold, green like sea glass, intelligent and kind and completely focused on me. "Rough night?" she asked, and her voice was like honey over whiskey, warm and smooth, with just a hint of an accent I couldn't place. "You could say that," I managed, suddenly aware of how I must look, soaked to the skin, makeup probably running down my face, clutching the remains of my umbrella like a security blanket. Without hesitation, she stepped closer and extended her umbrella to cover both of us. The relief from the rain was immediate and overwhelming, but it was nothing compared to the relief of human kindness from a stranger who had no reason to help me. "I'm Isabelle," she said, as if sharing shelter in a storm was the most natural thing in the world. "Lena," I replied, trying not to notice how she smelled like expensive perfume and possibility. "Lena," she repeated, and somehow my name sounded different when she said it. More important, more real. "What brings you to this charming neighborhood at such a lovely hour?" I almost laughed at the gentle sarcasm in her voice. "Work," I said simply, not ready to explain the complicated series of life choices that had led me to this moment. "Ah," she said, and I waited for the judgment, the questions, the assumptions. Instead, she just nodded. "We all do what we have to do." We stood there in comfortable silence for a moment, two strangers sharing space under an umbrella while the storm raged around us. I found myself studying her profile when she looked out at the rain, the elegant line of her nose, the way her lips curved slightly upward, even in repose, the confidence that seemed to radiate from her like heat. "Where are you headed?" she asked finally. "Honestly, I was just trying to get somewhere dry. My car's in the shop, and I don't have money for a cab." The admission embarrassed me, but something about her made honesty feel safer than lies. "Well," she said, turning to face me fully, "I have a car, and I was about to go somewhere warm and dry myself. Would you like to join me?" Every self-preservation instinct I had screamed that getting in a car with a stranger was a terrible idea. But I was cold, wet, exhausted, and something about Isabelle felt different, safe, like maybe the universe was finally throwing me a bone after weeks of relentless bad luck. I don't want to impose, I said weakly. You're not imposing, she said firmly. You're accepting an offer of help from someone who's in a position to give it. There's a difference. Her car was parked at the mouth of the alley, a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than I'd made in the past year. She opened the passenger door for me with old-fashioned courtesy, waiting until I was settled before closing it gently. The interior was warm and luxurious, all leather and subtle lighting. Classical music played softly from speakers I couldn't see, and the storm outside became a distant rumble. Better? She asked, sliding into the driver's seat with fluid grace. Much, I said, finally relaxing for the first time in hours. Thank you, really. You didn't have to stop, she said gently. We've established that I wanted to help. Now, are you hungry? I know a place that stays open late and serves the best French onion soup in 3 states. My stomach chose that moment to remind me I hadn't eaten since lunch, growling loudly enough to make us both laugh. I'll take that as a yes, Isabelle said, pulling into traffic with a kind of smooth confidence that suggested she'd been driving expensive cars. Her entire life, the restaurant she took me to was nothing like what I'd expected. Instead of some upscale Manhattan establishment, we pulled up to a tiny French bistro tucked away in a neighborhood I'd never heard of. The kind of place that looked unassuming from the outside, but whispered secrets of incredible food and stories shared over candlelight. Marie's, Isabelle said as she parked. The owner is from Lyon, and she makes everything from scratch. Fair. Warning, she'd probably try to adopt you. She has a weakness for strays. Is that what I am? I asked, only half joking. A stray? Isabelle turned off the engine and looked at me with those sea glass eyes. I think you're someone who's been through a storm, literally and figuratively, and deserves a warm meal in good company. The restaurant was nearly empty at this hour, just a few late-night diners lingering over wine and conversation. Marie herself, a round woman with silver hair and kind eyes, greeted Isabelle like a long-lost daughter, speaking rapid French. That I couldn't follow, but that sounded like music. And who is this beautiful girl? Marie asked, switching to English and focusing her attention on me with the intensity of a lighthouse beam. This is Lena, Isabelle said. She's had a difficult evening, and I thought you might be able to work some of your magic. Marie clucked sympathetically and ushered us to a corner table draped in white linen and lit by candles that cast dancing shadows on the walls. She disappeared into the kitchen without taking our order, clearly knowing exactly what we needed. She's going to bring us half the menu, Isabelle warned. Marie believes food is the answer to every problem. Is it? I asked. Sometimes, she said, leaning back in her chair with a smile. Sometimes it's just food. But good food shared with good company, that's something else entirely. As if summoned by her words, Marie reappeared with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses, followed by a steady stream of dishes that seemed to multiply every time I looked away. Soup that warmed me from the inside out, bread that was still warm from the oven, cheese that tasted like it had been aged in caves by monks with centuries of patience. So, Isabelle said as we ate, tell me about yourself. What do you do when you're not getting caught in storms? I hesitated, fork halfway to my mouth. How do you explain your life to someone who clearly lived in a different universe? I'm between careers right now, I said finally. I used to be a graphic designer, but that didn't work out. Now I'm figuring out what comes next. It wasn't technically a lie, just an edited version of the truth. What kind of design work did you do? She asked, and her interest seemed genuine. Mostly marketing materials. Websites, branding, print ads. Nothing too exciting, but I enjoyed the creative problem-solving aspect of it. That sounds exactly exciting, she said. Creating something from nothing, finding ways to communicate ideas visually, that's a real skill. What about you? I asked, deflecting attention from my career failures. What do you do? I'm in acquisitions, she said simply. I identify businesses with potential and help investors evaluate whether they are worth purchasing. What kind of businesses? All kinds. Restaurants, retail establishments, entertainment venues. I have a particular interest in businesses that serve as community gathering places, the kinds of establishments where people come together, share experiences, create memories. Something in the way she said it made me think there was more to the story, but before I could ask, Marie appeared with dessert, a chocolate souffle that defied both gravity and my ability to resist. We talked for hours, or maybe it just felt like hours because conversation flowed so easily between us. She told me about growing up in Boston, about traveling through Europe after college, about her love of old movies and new music. I found myself sharing stories I hadn't told anyone in months about my family, my dreams, the way I'd always felt like I was meant for something bigger than the life I'd accidentally fallen into. You have beautiful hands, she said suddenly, reaching across the table to touch my fingers where they rested near my wine glass. The contact was electric, sending sparks up my arm and straight to my chest. I looked down at our joined hands, hers pale and elegant with perfectly manicured nails, mine darker and work-worn, but somehow they fit together perfectly. I used to draw, I said, not pulling away. Before I got practical and went into design, I always thought artists had to have these delicate, ethereal hands, but my art teacher in high school told me that the best hands for creating were the ones that had lived a little. Smart teacher, Isabelle murmured, her thumb tracing across my knuckles in a way that made it hard to concentrate on anything else. The moment stretched between us, charged with possibility and the kind of tension that makes your breath come faster. Then Marie appeared at our table with a check, breaking the spell with her cheerful chatter about the late hour and the storm finally clearing. I should get you home, Isabelle said, though she sounded reluctant to break the connection we'd built. Actually, I said, surprising myself with my boldness, I don't have anywhere to go tonight. My ex-roommate, changed the locks, and I haven't found a new place yet. I was planning to crash at a friend's place, but with the storm, I trailed off, embarrassed by my own admission. Here I was, a grown woman with no home, no car, no real plan for the future. Then you'll stay with me, Isabelle said simply, as if it was the most obvious solution in the world. I couldn't impose, Lena, she said firmly, using the same tone she'd used in the alley. You're not imposing. You're accepting help from someone who wants to give it. And that's how I found myself in the passenger seat of her car again, driving through the now quiet streets toward Manhattan as the first hints of dawn painted the sky purple and gold. Isabelle's apartment was on the Upper East Side, in one of those buildings that screamed old money and older secrets. The doorman greeted her by name and didn't even blink at my disheveled appearance, which told me she'd brought home strays before. The elevator was silent and swift, carrying us up to the 30th floor where she led me down a hallway carpeted in deep burgundy. Her door was unmarked except for the number, and when she opened it, I stepped into a world I'd only seen in magazines. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Central Park that took my breath away. The furniture was elegant but comfortable, the kind of pieces that looked effortless but probably cost more than most people's annual salary. Art covered the walls, a mix of photographs and paintings that seemed carefully curated but not pretentious. Make yourself at home, she said, hanging up her coat in a closet that was bigger than my old bedroom. Would you like something to drink? Coffee, tea, something stronger? Coffee would be amazing, I said, still taking in my surroundings. This place is incredible, Isabelle. How long have you lived here? About 3 years, she said from the kitchen, which was all marble countertops and professional-grade appliances. I bought it after a particularly successful acquisition. Sometimes I still can't believe it's mine. The vulnerability in that admission surprised me. For all her obvious wealth and confidence, there was something almost uncertain in the way. She moved through her own space as if she was still getting used to occupying it. She brought me coffee in a mug that was probably handmade by someone famous, and we settled on her couch, which was positioned to take full advantage of the view. The storm had passed completely, leaving the city washed clean and glittering in the early morning light. It's beautiful, I said, gesturing toward the windows. It is, she agreed, but when I looked over, she was watching me instead of the view. The attraction that had been simmering between us all night suddenly felt immediate and urgent. We were alone, sitting close enough that I could smell her perfume and see the flecks of gold in her green eyes. The air between us felt charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. Lena, she said softly, and my name on her lips sounded like a prayer. Yeah? I need to tell you something. My heart sank. Here it was, the part where she explained that this was all a mistake, that she was straight or married or just being charitable to a pathetic stranger. Okay, I said, trying to prepare myself for disappointment. I wasn't in that alley by accident, she said. I was there because I'd been watching your workplace, Velvet Dreams. Confusion replaced disappointment. Watching it? Why? Because I'm considering it for acquisition. My company specializes in adult entertainment venues. We buy clubs, improve them, make them more profitable and safer for the women who work there. I stared at her, trying to process this information. So you knew who I was before you helped me? No, she said quickly. I knew you worked there, but I didn't know you. I was just leaving after meeting with Vincent when I saw you in the storm. Everything after that, helping you, dinner, bringing you here, that was all me being drawn to you as a person, not as someone connected to a business I'm evaluating. Vincent met with you? When? Earlier this evening, before your shift ended. We discussed the club's financials, its potential for growth. He's interesting. Something in her tone suggested that interesting was not a compliment. Vincent's a pig, I said bluntly. He treats the dancers like property and the bartenders like servants. If you're thinking about buying that place, you should know what you're getting into. That's exactly why I want to buy it, she said. Places like Velvet Dreams can be empowering for women when they're run correctly. When the owners respect their employees, provide safe working conditions, and share profits fairly. Vincent Carlucci does none of those things. So you want to save us? I asked, not sure how I felt about being someone's charity case. I want to create something better, she said. I want to build businesses where women have agency, where they're treated with dignity, where they can make good money in safe environments. It's not about saving anyone, it's about creating opportunities. The passion in her voice was unmistakable, and I found myself leaning closer, drawn in by her conviction. Why is this important to you? I asked. She was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the city lights. Because I know what it's like to feel powerless, she said finally. To work in places where your safety and dignity are considered optional. I got lucky. I found opportunities that let me build something different. Now I want to create those opportunities for other women. How did you get lucky? Another pause, longer this time. The right person saw potential in me and took a chance. Someone who believed I was worth investing in, even when I didn't believe it myself. There was a story there, something deeper than she was sharing, but I didn't push. We all had secrets, experiences that shaped us in ways we weren't ready to discuss with someone we just met. So what happens now, I asked. With the club, I mean? That depends on several factors, she said. Vincent's asking price, the club's actual financial state versus what he's reporting, and whether the employees would be open to the changes I'd want to make. What kind of changes? Better security, health insurance, profit sharing, education and training programs to help women transition to other careers if they want to. The goal is to make it a place where women work by choice, not desperation. It sounded too good to be true, which in my experience meant it probably was. But the sincerity in Isabelle's voice, the passion in her eyes when she talked about empowering women, it made me want to believe her. And what about us? I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. She turned to face me fully, her hand coming up to cup my cheek. What about us? Is this part of your business research? Getting close to one of Vincent's employees. Lena, she said firmly, her thumb stroking across my cheekbone. Look at me. Does this feel like business to you? It didn't. It felt like the most personal thing I'd experienced in months. The way she looked at me, touched me, said my name. It was all desire and genuine connection. Nothing calculated or professional about it. No, I whispered. Good, she said, leaning closer. Because it's not. When she kissed me, it was soft and tentative at first, a question more than a statement. But when I kissed her back, opening to her with a hunger I'd been suppressing all night, it became something else entirely. Her hand tangled in my still damp hair, and I pulled her closer, needing to feel her warmth against me. We broke apart, breathing heavily, foreheads pressed together. I should let you get some sleep, she said, though her voice suggested sleep was the last thing on her mind. Should, I agreed, but made no move to pull away. You've had a long night. You must be exhausted. I am, I said, then looked directly into her eyes, but I'm not ready for this to end yet. Her smile was like sunrise, slow and warm and transformative. Neither am I. I woke up in Egyptian cotton sheets that felt like silk against my skin, in a bed that was bigger than my old apartment's bedroom. For a moment, I was completely disoriented. The light was all wrong, the sounds were different, and I was naked. Under covers that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Then the memories came flooding back. The storm, Isabelle, dinner at Marie's, the drive to her apartment with its impossible view, and then everything that happened after. I turned over expecting to find her beside me, but the bed was empty except for an indentation in the pillow and the lingering scent of her perfume. Panic fluttered in my chest. Had I dreamed the whole thing? Had she left? Worse, had she decided that whatever had happened between us was a mistake? But then I heard her voice, muffled but distinct, coming from somewhere else in the apartment. She was talking to someone, her tone professional and clipped in a way that was completely different from how she'd spoken to me. I need more time. She was saying, the situation is more complicated than we initially thought. I slipped out of bed and pulled on the robe she'd left folded on a chair, silk, of course in a deep blue that probably brought out my eyes. The apartment was designed in a way that carried sound, and I could hear her clearly now, though I couldn't see her. Yes, I understand the timeline, she continued. But if we move too quickly, we risk compromising everything we've worked for. Vincent is suspicious by nature, and the employees are already on edge. We need to build trust before we can expect cooperation. Vincent, she was talking about Vincent and Velvet Dreams. My stomach clenched as I realized this was business, not personal. Of course it was business. Women like Isabelle didn't rescue women like me out of the goodness of their hearts. The bartender could be useful, she said, and my blood went cold. She's been there long enough to understand the operation, but she's not part of Vincent's inner circle. She could provide insight into employee morale and daily operations, the bartender. She was talking about me. I must have made some sound. A gasp, a footstep, something, because the conversation stopped abruptly. I have to go, Isabelle said. We'll continue this later. I heard her footsteps approaching and quickly moved away from where I'd been eavesdropping, pretending to admire the view from her living room windows. But my hands were shaking, and I couldn't make my expression as neutral as I wanted it to be. Good morning, she said softly, appearing behind me and wrapping her arms around my waist. Did I wake you? No, I lied, leaning back against her. Warmth despite the cold spreading through my chest. I was just admiring the view. It's beautiful in the morning light, she agreed, pressing a kiss to my neck that sent shivers through me. How did you sleep? Like the dead, I said, which was true. I'd been more exhausted than I realized, and her bed was incredibly comfortable. That mattress is amazing. I'm glad you were comfortable. Her arms tightened around me. I was. Thinking we could have breakfast together before I take you wherever you need to go. Wherever I needed to go, right, because this wasn't my life, wasn't my world. I was just a temporary visitor, someone useful for her business purposes who happened to be good in bed. That's okay, I said, pulling away from her embrace. I should get going. I have things to do today. Lena. Her voice was concerned. Is something wrong? I turned to face her, taking in her rumpled silk pajamas, her hair tousled from sleep, the genuine worry in her green eyes. She looked like someone who cared about me, someone who had spent the night making love to me with a passion that felt real and desperate and true. You tell me, I said. Is something wrong? I don't understand. I heard you on the phone, I said quietly. Talking about Vincent, about the club, about how the bartender could be useful for providing insight. Her face went pale, and I saw, the exact moment she realized what I'd overheard. Lena, let me explain. Explain what? That last night was business? That you brought me here to pump me for information about Vincent's operation? No, she said firmly. That's not what happened. Then what did happen? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you found a convenient way to get close to one of Vincent's employees, and I was stupid enough to fall for it. You're wrong, she said, moving closer, but I stepped back. Yes, I was on a business call. Yes, I'm investigating Velvet Dreams for a potential acquisition. That last night, what happened between us, that was real, Lena. That was about you and me, not about business. How am I supposed to believe that when you were literally discussing how useful I could be to your investigation? She ran her hands through her hair, frustrated. Because I was trying to protect you. Protect me how? My business partner wanted me to approach you directly, to recruit you as an informant. I told him I thought that was unethical, that if we were going to gather information about the club, we needed to do it through legitimate channels. And sleeping with me is a legitimate channel. I didn't sleep with you for information, she said, her voice rising slightly. I slept with you because I was attracted to you. Because I felt a connection I haven't felt in years. Because when I kissed you, the rest of the world disappeared. Her words hit me like a physical blow, mostly because I wanted so desperately to believe them. Then why were you talking about me like I was an asset to be exploited? Because I was trying to keep you out of it, she said. My partner thinks we should be more aggressive in our information gathering. I was trying to convince him that we could complete our evaluation without involving you at all. I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. She met my gaze. Directly, her eyes open and pleading. Lena, she said softly, I know how this looks. I know you have every reason not to trust me. But I'm asking you to give me a chance to prove that what happened between us is separate from what's happening with the club. How? Come with me today. Let me show you what I actually do, who I actually am. Let me prove to you that I'm not using you. It was a risk. Everything about Isabelle was a risk. Her wealth, her interest in the club, the way she made me feel things I thought I was too broken to feel. But the alternative was walking away, going back to my temporary life of sleeping on friends. Couches and serving drinks to men who saw me as nothing more than a pretty face, attached to a pair of hands that could mix cocktails. Okay, I said finally, show me. Isabelle's office was in a sleek building in Midtown, all glass and steel reaching toward the sky like a monument to success. But her actual workspace was surprisingly warm and personal, family photos on the desk, plants in the corners, artwork that looked like it came from local artists rather than expensive galleries. This is where the magic happens, she said, gesturing around the room with self-deprecating humor. Though most days it feels more like organized chaos. Her assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia, who looked like she could run a small country with one hand tied behind her back, brought us coffee and what appeared to be files on several different businesses. These are some of the establishments we've acquired over the past 3 years, Isabelle explained, opening the first folder. A restaurant in Brooklyn that was failing because the owner couldn't handle the business side. We kept all the original staff, improved the working conditions, and now it's one of the most popular spots in the neighborhood. She showed me before and after photos, financial statements, testimonials from employees. The transformation was remarkable, not just in terms of profitability, but in terms of worker satisfaction and community impact. This is a spa in Queens, she continued, opening another file. The previous owner was exploiting undocumented workers, paying them practically nothing and threatening to report them if they complained. We not only legitimized their employment status, but gave them profit sharing and health care. And this? I asked, pointing to a third folder. A gentleman's club in Boston, she said, and I felt my stomach tighten. Similar situation to Velvet. Dreams. Women working in unsafe conditions, management taking advantage of their desperation. We restructured everything, security, scheduling, compensation, working conditions. Now it's owned partially by the women who work there. I looked through the documentation, the photos, the financial records. It all seemed legitimate, even admirable, but something still felt off. Isabelle, I said carefully, what exactly is your background? How did you get into this kind of work? She was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the city below. I used to dance, she said finally. Not ballet or contemporary exotic dancing. I worked at clubs like Velvet Dreams for almost 5 years. The admission hit me like a physical blow. I've been so focused on the differences between us, her wealth, her education, her obvious sophistication, that I'd never considered we might have more in common than I'd thought. When? I asked, my early 20s. I had a degree in business, but I also had student loans that were crushing me and a family situation that required more money than any entry-level corporate job was going to provide. Dancing was good money, and I was good at it. What changed? I met someone, she said. A woman who saw potential in me beyond what I could do on a stage. She helped me get into acquisitions, taught me how to evaluate businesses, how to see opportunities where other people saw problems. When she died, she left me enough money to start my own firm. She left you money? She left me everything, Isabelle said simply. Her business, her contacts, her apartment. She said I was the daughter she never had, and she wanted me to continue. Her work. What was her work? Buying businesses that exploited women and turning them into businesses that empowered women. She'd been doing it for 20 years before I met her, and she trained me to carry on after she was gone. The story was touching and made sense of so much about Isabelle, her passion for her work, her understanding of power dynamics, her genuine desire to help women in vulnerable situations. But it also raised new questions. How did you meet her? I asked. She was a client, Isabelle said. She came to the club where I worked, but not for the usual reasons. She was evaluating it for acquisition, and she noticed that I was different from the other dancers, more observant, more strategic. She offered me a job as a consultant, helping her understand the business from the inside. And you trusted her? Not at first, Isabelle admitted. I thought it was another proposition from another wealthy person who thought they could buy whatever they wanted. But she was patient, professional, and she delivered on every promise she made. Eventually, I realized she was offering me a way out that didn't require me to compromise my integrity. I was quiet, processing this new information. It explained so much about Isabelle's approach to business, her understanding of the industry, her genuine concern for the women who worked in these establishments. But it also made me wonder what other surprises she might be hiding. Is there anything else I should know? I asked. Any other revelations you want to share? She looked at me seriously. There's one more thing, but I need you to promise me you'll be careful with this information. My pulse quickened. What is it? Vincent Carlucci isn't just running a strip club, she said. He's using Velvet Dreams as a front for money laundering and possibly human trafficking. The acquisition isn't just about improving working conditions. It's about exposing his operation and shutting down his criminal enterprise. The room seemed to spin around me. What are you saying? I'm saying that Vincent is dangerous, more dangerous than you probably realize. And if he finds out that you're connected to me or that I'm not who I've told him I am, both of our lives could be in danger. Who are you then? I asked, though I was beginning to suspect I didn't want to know the answer. Isabelle reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a badge and identification card. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Special Agent Isabelle. Chun. I'm an FBI agent, she said quietly. And Vincent Carlucci is the target of a 2-year investigation into organized crime and human trafficking. Velvet Dreams is just one piece of a much larger operation that spans multiple states and involves dozens of businesses and hundreds of victims. I stared at the badge, then at her face, trying to reconcile this new information with everything I thought I knew about her. So everything you told me was a lie? I asked. Not everything, she said. The story about dancing, about meeting someone who changed my life, that's all true. But the woman who helped me wasn't just a businesswoman. She was Agent Sarah Martinez, my mentor at the FBI. She recruited me because of my background, because I understood the industry from the inside. And last night, was that part of your investigation too? No, she said firmly, moving around the desk to stand closer to me. Last night was the most real thing that's happened to me in months, maybe years. Lena, I know this is a lot to process, but I need you to understand. My feelings for you have nothing to do with the case. I stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. The city spread out below us, millions of people living their complicated lives, and I felt like I was drowning in the complexity of my own. This is insane, I said. You're an FBI agent investigating my boss for human trafficking, and I'm supposed to believe that you just happened to be attracted to me? You're supposed to believe what you felt last night, she said. Because that was real, Lena. Everything else is complicated, but what happened between us was simple and honest and true. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. So badly it physically hurt. But my life had taught me to be suspicious of things that seemed too good to be true. What do you want from me? I asked. I want you to be safe, she said. And I want a chance to explore what's happening between us without the case getting in the way. How is that possible when the case involves my workplace and potentially my safety? Because we're close to making arrests, she said. Very close. Vincent's operation is unraveling, and within the next few days, he's going to be in federal custody along with his associates. Once that happens, you'll be safe, and we can figure out what comes next for us. A few days? I repeated. What am I supposed to do until then? Act normal? Pretend I don't know anything? That's exactly what you're supposed to do, she said. Go to work, do your job. Don't let Vincent suspect that anything has changed. Can you do that? I thought about Vincent, his wandering hands, his crude comments, the way he looked at all the women who worked for him like they were inventory instead of human beings. The thought of him being involved in something as horrible as human trafficking made perfect sense. which was perhaps the most depressing realization of all. What if he finds out about us? I asked, what if someone saw us together last night? That's a risk, she admitted. That Vincent doesn't know my real identity. As far as he's concerned, I'm just another potential investor, and you're just someone I happen to meet. Is that all I am? I asked. Someone you happen to meet? She crossed the room in 3 quick steps and cupped my face in her hands. You are the best thing that's happened to me in longer than I can remember, she said. You are brave and beautiful, and you make me want to be honest about things I've been hiding for years. You are not just someone I happen to meet. You're someone I can't imagine letting go of. When she kissed me, it was with the same passion and desperation I remembered from the night before. And despite everything, the lies, the danger, the impossibility of the situation, I kissed her back with equal fervor. What happens? After, I asked when we broke apart. After Vincent is arrested and the case is closed, what happens to us? I don't know, she said honestly. I've never been in this situation before. But I'd like to find out if you're willing. Looking into her eyes, seeing the vulnerability there alongside the determination, I made a choice that was either the smartest or stupidest thing I'd ever done. Okay, I said. I'm willing. The next few days passed in a surreal haze of normalcy, layered over barely contained chaos. I went to work at Velvet Dreams, mixed drinks, made small talk with customers, and pretended that my world hadn't been completely upended by a federal agent with sea glass, eyes and a smile that made me forget why I was supposed to be careful. Vincent seemed his usual sleazy self, making inappropriate comments, skimming money from the till, treating the dancers like commodities. But now that I knew what Isabelle had told me, I found myself noticing things I'd overlooked before. The way certain men came in, but never stayed long, conducting brief conversations with Vincent before disappearing. The locked office upstairs that I'd always assumed was storage. The girls who worked a few shifts and then vanished without explanation. You seem distracted lately, said Maya, one of the dancers who'd been working at the club longer than anyone else. We were in the break room during a lull, sharing Chinese takeout and gossip. Just tired, I said, which wasn't entirely a lie. Between the stress of keeping Isabelle's secret and the hypervigilance that came with knowing I was potentially surrounded by criminals, I was exhausted. It's this place, Maya said, lowering her voice. It's getting weirder. Have you noticed the new security cameras? And Vincent's been asking strange questions about our schedules, our personal lives, where we go when we're not here. I had noticed the cameras, and now that Maya mentioned it, Vincent had been more intrusive than usual. Just yesterday, he'd asked me where I was living, whether I had family in the area, if I had any plans to travel. At the time, I chalked it up to his general nosiness, but now it felt more sinister. What kind of questions? I asked. Whether we have boyfriends, whether anyone ever comes to pick us up from work, if we've been talking to anyone unusual. And get this, he offered me extra money to work some private parties at his house. But I asked what kind of parties. He got all vague and creepy about it. My blood ran cold. Private parties. That sounded exactly like the kind of thing Isabelle was investigating. Did you take the job? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Hell no, Maya said. I may need the money, but I'm not stupid. Something about this whole situation feels off, you know? Like we're all being watched and evaluated for something. She was right, and it terrified me. If Maya, who had no connection to the investigation, was picking up on the strange atmosphere, how long before Vincent realized that something was wrong? I was still thinking about our conversation when my phone buzzed with a text from Isabelle. Can you meet me tonight? Same place as before. The same place was Marie's restaurant, which had apparently become our unofficial safe house. I texted back that I'd be there after my shift, then spent the rest of the evening hyper-aware of every conversation, every glance, every movement in the club. Vincent was in his office most of the night, door closed, voice raised in what sounded like heated phone conversations. Twice I saw him looking out at the main floor, his eyes scanning the crowd like he was searching for something specific. When his gaze landed on me, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the club's aggressive air conditioning. At closing time, I helped clean up with mechanical efficiency, desperate to get out of there and back to the safety of Isabelle's presence. But as I was heading for the door, Vincent called my name. Lena, sweetheart, come here for a minute. My stomach dropped, but I forced myself to smile and walk over to where he was standing near the bar. What's up, Vincent? You've been working here, what, 3 months now? About that, yeah. You're a good worker, reliable. The customers like you. He leaned against the bar, his gold chains catching the light from the neon signs. I got a proposition for you. Oh, I'm expanding my operation. Looking for girls who can handle more responsibility, make more money. You interested? What kind of responsibility? I asked, though I was pretty sure I didn't want to know the answer. Hospitality work, private events, exclusive clientele. The kind of work that pays real well if you're smart about it. The offer made my skin crawl, but I knew I had to respond carefully. If I seemed too eager, he'd be suspicious. If I refused outright, he might become suspicious for different reasons. That sounds interesting, I said. Can I think about it? I'd want to know more details before committing to anything. Sure, he said, but his eyes were calculating. Take your time. But don't take too long. Opportunities like this don't come around often. I left the club feeling like I had a target painted on my back, and I couldn't get to Marie's restaurant fast enough. Isabelle was already waiting when I arrived, sitting in the same corner booth where we'd shared our first meal together. But tonight she looked different, tense, alert, like she was preparing for battle. How was work? She asked as I slid into the seat across from her. Terrifying, I said, honestly. Vincent offered me a job doing hospitality work for private events. I think he's trying to recruit me for whatever illegal operation you're investigating. Her expression darkened. What exactly did he say? I repeated the conversation word for word, watching her face grow more concerned with each detail. Lena, she said when I finished, I need you to promise me something. Do not, under any circumstances, accept that job or go anywhere alone with Vincent. The operation we're investigating involves coercing women into situations they can't easily escape from. What kind of situations? Prostitution, primarily, but also other forms of exploitation. He targets women who are financially desperate, socially isolated, or otherwise vulnerable. He offers them what seems like easy money, then uses debt, intimidation, and sometimes physical force to keep them trapped. The room felt like it was spinning. And you think he's trying to recruit me? I think you fit his target profile perfectly, she said grimly. Young, financially struggling, no strong local support network, working in an environment where the line between legal and illegal is already blurred. How do you know so much about his methods? Because we've been tracking his operation for 2 years, and we've interviewed dozens of his victims. The pattern is always the same. He identifies vulnerable women, offers them opportunities that seem too good to be true, then gradually escalates the demands until they're completely under his control. I felt nauseous. Maya said he offered her the same kind of work. What if he's already recruiting other girls from the club? He probably is, Isabelle said. That's why we need to move quickly. The raid is scheduled for tomorrow night. Tomorrow? I said, my voice higher than I intended. That's so soon. We've been waiting for the right moment, when we could catch him with evidence of his illegal activities, and when we had enough information to arrest his entire network. Based on what you just told me, I think he's accelerating his timeline. Because he suspects something? What does this mean for me? For us? Isabelle reached across the table and took my hands. It means that after tomorrow night, Vincent Carlucci will never be able to hurt you or anyone else again. It means you'll be free to make choices about your life without fear or desperation driving those choices. And us? I pressed. What does it mean for us? She was quiet for a moment, her thumb stroking across my knuckles in a gesture that was becoming familiar and comforting. It means we get to find out who we are when we're not in crisis mode, she said. It means we get to build something real without secrets and danger hanging over us. I want that, I said. More than I've ever wanted anything. Good, she said, bringing my hands to her lips and pressing a soft kiss to my fingertips. Because I want it too. We talked for another hour, going over what would happen during the raid, what I should expect in terms of interviews and possible testimony, how to stay safe until Vincent was in custody. By the time we left the restaurant, I felt as prepared as anyone could be for watching their workplace get raided by federal agents. Isabelle drove me back to my friend's apartment where I was staying, and we sat in her car for a few minutes, reluctant to end the evening. After tomorrow, she said, everything changes, for better or worse. I asked, for better, she said confidently. Definitely for better. She kissed me goodnight with a tenderness that made my chest ache, and I watched her drive away before going inside to what would hopefully be my last night of sleeping on someone Elsa's couch. The next evening started like any other at Velvet. Dreams. The usual crowd of after-work customers, the usual rotation of dancers, the usual atmosphere of barely controlled chaos masked as entertainment. I mixed drinks and made conversation, hyper-aware of every sound, every movement, every person who walked through the door. Vincent was more agitated than usual, pacing between his office and the main floor, having hushed conversations with men I didn't recognize. Twice I caught him staring at me with an intensity that made my skin crawl, and I began to wonder if somehow he'd figured out my connection to Isabelle. At 10:30, everything changed. The first sign was the sudden appearance of men in suits, who didn't look like typical customers. They positioned themselves at strategic points around the club, near the exits, by the bar, close to Vincent's office. They weren't obviously law enforcement, but something about their posture and watchfulness set off every alarm bell I had. The second sign was Vincent's reaction when he noticed them. His face went pale, then flushed with anger, and he started moving toward his office with the urgent stride of someone who needed to destroy evidence quickly. The third sign was the light suddenly cutting out, plunging the club into darkness, except for the emergency lighting and the neon signs behind. The bar. Ladies and gentlemen, a voice boomed over a megaphone. This is the FBI. This establishment is now under federal investigation. Please remain calm and follow the instructions of the agents present. Chaos erupted. Customers started pushing toward the exits. Dancers grabbed their clothes and money, and Vincent's voice could be heard over the noise screaming at someone to get rid of everything now. I stayed behind the bar, exactly where Isabelle had told me to be, watching the scene unfold with fascination and terror. Agents in FBI jackets seemed to materialize from everywhere. They'd been inside the club, disguised as customers and staff, waiting for the signal. Through the confusion, I saw Isabelle emerge from behind a group of agents, her badge clearly visible, her entire demeanor transformed from the woman I knew into someone powerful and commanding. She was directing the operation, coordinating with other agents, completely in her element. Our eyes met across the chaos, and she gave me a small nod that I interpreted as, "Stay calm. Everything is going according to plan." Vincent was arrested near his office, apparently caught in the act of trying to destroy computer files. As they led him away in handcuffs, he looked directly at me with a hatred so intense it made me step back. "This isn't over," he shouted, struggling against the agents who were restraining him. "You think you're safe? You think any of you are safe? This is bigger than me, bigger than this place." His words sent a chill through me, but before I could process what he might mean, one of the agents approached me. "Ms. Martinez, I'm Agent Johnson. Agent Chen asked me to escort you to a secure location for your safety and for questioning." I nodded and followed him out of the club, stepping over broken glass and abandoned purses, past crying dancers and confused customers, into a night that felt electric with possibility and danger. The secure location turned out to be the FBI field office downtown, where I spent the next 4 hours answering questions about Vincent, the club, and my observations of the operation. The agents were professional and kind, but I could tell they were building a case that would put Vincent away for a very long time. It was nearly 3 a.m. when Isabelle finally appeared in the interview room, looking exhausted but triumphant. "How are you holding up?" she asked, sitting down across from me at the metal table. "I'm okay," I said. "Tired, but okay." "How did it go?" "Better than we hoped," she said. "We found everything: financial records, client lists, evidence of coercion and trafficking, connections to organized crime families in 3 states. Vincent Carlucci is going to prison for the rest of his life. And the other girls, Maya and the others, safe," she said. "We have social workers and victim advocates working with anyone who is being exploited. The women who are working there voluntarily will be helped to find other employment if they want it." I felt a huge weight lift off my chest. "So it's over?" "The criminal case is just beginning, but the immediate danger is over, yes." She reached across the table and took my hand. "Lena, there's something else we need to talk about." My stomach dropped. "What?" Vincent's threat tonight about this being bigger than him. He wasn't just talking. We've uncovered evidence that his operation was part of a larger network, and some of the people involved are still at large. What does that mean for me? It means that until we're sure we've arrested everyone involved, you could still be in danger. Vincent specifically mentioned you during his arrest, And we have reason to believe he gave orders to his associates before we took him into custody. I stared at her, trying to process this information. So what happens now? Now we make sure you're safe, she said firmly. The Bureau is prepared to offer you protection until we're confident the threat has been eliminated. What kind of protection? A safe house, new identity if necessary, relocation assistance. Whatever it takes to keep you out of harm's way. The idea of starting over completely, of leaving behind what little life I'd managed to build, was overwhelming. But the alternative, living in fear, looking over my shoulder, never knowing if Vincent's associates were watching, was worse. For how long? I asked. I don't know, she said honestly. It could be weeks, it could be months. It depends on how quickly we can track down the rest of the network. And what about us? What happens to us if I disappear into witness protection? Isabelle was quiet for a long moment, and I could see her struggling with something. There's another option, she said finally. But it's complicated, and it involves me making some major changes to my career. What kind of option? I could request a transfer to a field office wherever you end up. I could be your handler, your primary contact with the Bureau. It would mean giving up my current position, probably taking a step back in my career, but it would mean we could stay together. The sacrifice she was offering took my breath away. Isabelle, you can't do that. Your career, your life here, I can't ask you to give that up for me. You're not asking, she said. I'm offering. Because the idea of you disappearing, of not knowing if you're safe, of losing what we've found together, that's worse than any career setback. I looked into her eyes and saw something I'd never seen directed at me before. Unconditional love. Not the desperate, clinging kind of love that demanded sacrifice, but the steady, sure kind that made sacrifice feel like privilege. Are you sure? I asked. I've never been more sure of anything in my life.